Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Christy Williams. I'm joined by my CEO, Sean Farrell. We are with Managed Solution, who's been in business for about 18 years now, and we've been doing the remote work thing for quite a while now, and we know that with the spread of COVID-19, that many businesses are looking for guidance on what they can do to enable a remote workforce and help them stay productive during these difficult times. So we're so happy that you've joined us today. We really hope that we can help you provide some guidance, start getting you think about questions to ask and ideas for next steps to make this period in history really as easy as possible on you and your business. So I'm going to be monitoring the questions as they come in. So please go ahead and ask away. We want this to be as interactive as possible and really help you. So I'll be monitoring those. I'll be happy to interrupt Sean as he's going through it. So please chime in. And with that, I'll hand it over to Sean.
All right. Can you hear me good, Christy?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining the call, and I'll try to make this as collaborative as possible. So please, if you have questions, ask Christy, and you could just type them in there, and we'll make sure I get them answered. And again, I think I had sent out a message yesterday to the community. I'm hoping that everybody comes together through this process and learns a lot about each other as humans, and ultimately how our businesses can survive and work through this this challenge that we're having ahead of us. So today, and my goal is to help everybody understand how simple remote work can be, and how do we get through this, and ultimately what are the next steps we need to take if we're not already working remotely. So start with this. For anybody on the phone, CEO, somebody who's a technologist, all the way to down to people in sales out there working remote. So I want to help you lessen the fear today, which you may already have when it comes to working remote. How I access things, where I save data, what could happen to my data, how I get a hold of people. I mean, all that stuff I want to talk about today. I want to give you guys some questions and ideas on what to do, and I'll just tell you different ideas and solutions that are out there. I'm going to try to talk about things that you may already have in place that you don't necessarily leverage remotely today. So hopefully you don't have to either go spend a lot of money, or frankly, you just figure out how to use them better. And then I want to talk about, again, some of the tools to address your needs. And then hopefully by the end of this, and we're going to do more of these, I think, over the next week. We need to. Anyway, help you guys figure out how to be a productive workforce. So start with the top, and I'm going to keep, as best I can, the messaging super simple. And if we want to get more complex, offline in a conversation, we definitely can. But today, right now, the term in the industry is WFH, work from home, remote workforce. But here's kind of the things I want to talk about today. The first thing you have to understand, and for some of these, some of you guys, this is simple, is that we have to have portable devices to be able to, with internet access on them right now, to be able to work remote. So that could mean laptops, smartphones, tablets, and really even desktops that have wireless internet or access to the internet, so we can get into something somewhere that's outside of our home or wherever it is we're working remote. The second thing we're going to be talking about today is access to hardware for the remote work. I don't know what people are seeing out there, but we're doing a lot of procurement for our customers currently around hardware that will help them work remote, and it is not available, or it is very difficult to come by. So as we told a customer even this morning, I was on a quick call at 8 o'clock with a large biosciences firm. I said, we literally have to get online, find what's available, order it right then, or else it's it's gone within sometimes 30 minutes. So we are struggling just like everybody else in trying to get hardware. So if we can, we'll get it for you, and we'll pass it on to you guys, whatever the cost is we can get. Productivity tools, and I want to keep that term simple for now, but everybody knows that to work remote, you're going to need things like video conferencing or web conferencing, quick ways to get messages across through like an instant messaging app or some other form of collaborative tool. You're going to have your old trusty email to send things back and forth, and we can talk about if it's in the cloud or on premise and the benefits or not, of having either which way. How do I get to files, data, Excel files, Word files, you name that, we can talk about it. And then I don't want to confuse anybody with mobile devices and mobile management today. I just want to talk about the fact that we're working in a mobile place now or remotely, and we have to be able to manage our workforce from the mothership, from the cloud, wherever that is, in an efficient way. And so we're going to talk a little bit about mobile management, endpoint management, security, what it means to be a user in our organization right now, and some of the tools that we can leverage if we're not already doing so. And then with that, we'll lead right into, and I'll keep this term, and I don't want to confuse anybody, but identity management and security. And I don't want to get too deep into security today. I just want to talk to you about who are you in your business. You have an identity with permissions that certain people can access certain things and others can't. And then, of course, how do you make sure that the stuff that we take out of the workplace, at our homes, can be managed remotely? And we'll talk about that today. And hopefully that gives us a good start on, things we need to do to become a remote workforce. And I will talk to you guys at the end a little bit about how to best support that too. And it's, it's challenging right now when our internal IT teams have been sort of in-house for our company. So, so what do you need to know about portable devices? You need to know that obviously laptops, smartphones, anything with an internet capable type play on it is going to allow you to work remotely. The other thing that companies are asking us right now are, how do I access what was in my office, at my local quote unquote data center, the place where I host my stuff down the street, or maybe even where it's at when it's in the big boys like Amazon or Microsoft or Salesforce or all that good stuff. And so what companies are trying to figure out is the best way to allow access into something else. And I'm just going to give everybody who is non-technical some of the terms that are out there, and maybe some of the technical guys, maybe they have something in place, or maybe they want to rethink something for the future, and of course in the immediate. So a lot of people are connecting via VPNs right now, and VPNs in a simple form have to have certain limitations to them, meaning there may only be a certain amount of users at any given time that can log in. So we may be buying bigger VPN devices or firewalls or whatever it is, so more people can access our networks remotely. There's the idea of a remote desktop, or I'll call it a desktop as a service, where really the processing and all the applications you're accessing are being done on the servers that, like I mentioned earlier, sit somewhere within your organization, or potentially in our software vendors organization, say a Microsoft or a Salesforce. Or for those of you guys using Office 365 out there, if you think about it, you're really using an internet browser and ultimately logging into the cloud to get to your office and productivity suite. So I would kind of think about remote desktop, or kind of the new thing that Microsoft came out with in the last 6 months, Windows virtual desktop, where that Windows device that we all have, or Apple device or Linux device, becomes virtual. And then the third thing is if we want to get away from VPNs and remote desktops and all that good stuff, and we want to just leverage an internet browser, Chrome, IE, or Explorer, Safari, or any of those ones, as long as you're using Windows 10, you can actually access directly through the internet, what's called through direct access, and we can talk about how to get there. But what I want to make sure of is when we think about, and I'll use an iPad as an example, those portable devices, they're not really doing much on the device. Everything they're doing is accessed somewhere else because there's no place to put something on the hard drive to save it. So anyway, real quick, I'm going to pause there. It looks like we have a question. Christy, do you know what the question is?
Yes, and we had one question come in about
Sure.
access to slides and the recording afterwards. We are recording and we will be sending out this information. So go ahead and take notes, but just rest assured that you'll have the information emailed to you afterwards. The question that just came in is, why would we want to go away from a VPN?
Yeah, good question. Well, back to, if organizations, traditionally VPNs are either built onto your firewall, as, the front end access to your organization, you have a firewall, and sometimes they have a built-in VPN, or they're using some form of VPN, virtual private network client, that allows people to access it. The challenge there is that, the VPN may not be set up potentially to accept enough users. So at any given time, what they call concurrent users, there may be people getting kicked off. But let me back up and say there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just going to say to you that that's one option. Number two is people do have to go traverse through one level of access connecting into this VPN, and then they can connect into, say, their system or network, which through other ways, we talked about it earlier, Windows virtual desktop or like direct access, it's more of a just hit the internet, get in there and connect, which makes it a little bit easier for users. So sometimes even the learning curve, if people haven't used a VPN, can be troublesome to the help desks, because we're getting a lot of calls, to be honest. And of course, it just makes life easier for the user. So there are options, but there's nothing wrong. Let me state that again with the VPN. Lots and lots and lots of people are using it. All right, I'm going to keep going. So can I get the mobile devices, and if not, what? And I say this because we work with Dell, and this is not to make anybody nervous. We can figure it out together. That's what this whole idea is about, is how to help everybody in our community and anybody that calls. So we're working with every manufacturer we can, from the wholesale distributors, Ingram Micro, Tech Data, the Dells, the HPs, the Lenovos. They're all partners of ours. And as you guys are probably seeing, if you're trying to do it on your own, they're saying they're backlogged 2 to 3 weeks. And as I told my procurement team, I've told our sales team, I've, even jokingly yesterday, I talked to some of our customers. It's going to be a 2-week backlog to get equipment. Unless we do certain things where we can find, stuff that's going to work, portable devices are going to work that have wireless access, that we can get in like the next 2 days. And the reality is that's when people need them, is ASAP. So like I mentioned this morning, we're working our best. We're working to do our best with our partners and our vendors to get stuff on the fly for them. So call us. What I've told my procurement team is take a credit card right there, or figure out, what's available, show them online, whatever it needs to be, and get that stuff ordered so we can get it within a few days, if not, potentially next day. And that includes not just laptops and portable devices, but that includes things like, maybe you need a bigger VPN firewall, or you need potentially a hotspot. Those things are just going crazy. One thing I do recommend is that, if companies are going to give stipends to their employees to, say, get hotspots on their smartphones or tablets and things like that, there are tools that we have out there to kind of manage what I call the expenses of those things, to make sure we understand who's doing what on any given month. And it's called mobile expense management. It's just an idea of keeping track of what's going on in the remote workplace. So anyway, we can still get them. One of the things I wanted to bring up too was, how do I continue to communicate when in some cases, and again, I'm talking to some companies who are way ahead of the curve and some who are not. In some cases, I don't have a desk phone at work that actually allows me to dial out. So today, we're using our products that we have, and there's a lot of them, Microsoft Teams and Skype, where, Cisco has products, Nortel, ShoreTel, all these companies have products that allow us to have a soft phone on our desk, and, a headset like this, or, frankly, just talking to your laptop. Just make sure you're prepared for that, and just think about the quickest, most efficient ways you can get that stuff set up if you already haven't. The old, trusty cell phone works, but I think, again, it still can be a little bit disconnected if everybody's trying to do things over their cell. So how do I stay productive? And this slide, and I'll get down into it a little bit more, is going to be probably the most important. And I'll start with, companies have to do a few specific things to do well in this next, several weeks as they work from home, and frankly into the future, because I think this is going to become more commonplace. But the concept today is that companies are working remote in sort of a hub. And what that means is that there's one place that every individual who works for me, and even my, say, customers or partners that work with me, can come to get information. And so that information could be things like, sharing of a Word or an Excel document, or, making sure that we can set up conference calls like we're doing today so everybody can join, whether we use video or we don't, things that, can happen. Or, we can send quick and instant messages, or frankly, get activities out to people so that people get instant notification of something going on in the organization. And I say that because if you think about traditional ways that people are doing things, there's still that, if I don't check my email, and, we get them pretty quick on this, that I might not know what's going on in my organization. So when we talk about hubs of communication, we're spinning up things for customers right now that allow them to, whether it's a CEO wanting to send an announcement out, or the head of sales or HR, that allow you to get an instant activity that says, hey, here's what's going on in the company. And it's kind of like a billboard for our organization. So those things are important. More than ever, we're traditionally sending documents across through email. You attach it, you send it, the other person looks at it, sends you an edit back, or sends you another email. It slows down the process. So for those people who aren't out there doing things like sharing documents, the old file up in the corner down there, it says share. You guys can now co-author documents, especially from afar when you guys are work from home. you should be doing that today. And if you're not, it's a simple setup that ultimately is sort of governed inside of your, productivity suite of tools. Mail is not going away. It's predominant. It's where even all those activities I referred to earlier come in and actually funnel into, so you know something happened. So email is here to stay. It's an important thing, and I won't say anything more. Voice is important in the fact that, like I mentioned earlier, how are you going to receive voice calls? And I don't want this to be confusing, because many people have voice systems, the old days, voice over IP. Some people call it UCaaS, Unified Communications as a Service. Bottom line is, how do we communicate and how do we do it efficiently? So for us and other companies, Microsoft has its Skype or Teams version. A lot of people are using Cisco, but the question is, can I do it through a remote device since I don't have my desk phone from work? The answer should be yes. And if you don't have soft phones set up, it's very doable. And then number two, what kind of stuff do I use? Headsets, things like that. And frankly, in this right now, if you guys are in a predicament just trying to get work done, I think you can always even forward, if you're not familiar, some of your voice stuff onto your cell phone so calls get picked up there. So things like that are simple to do if you don't know how to do them already. And then the last one that we have to think about is document management. And we all think it's so easy, and people are calling me every day asking me, Sean, I guess I never really thought about it. I sent everybody off to work from home because we had to in this situation. And the concern I have is, where are they saving data and how does that all work? And so, I've heard people tell me, well, I have, Dropbox, or I have Box, or I have OneDrive from Microsoft, or I have SharePoint, or I have Slack. And I say to them, that's good. The question is how and what governance do you have around that so that people are essentially saving data to something central? And if not, how do we get it centralized? And then ultimately, when we do come back to work, or in that time that we're out of work, make sure that all of our intellectual property as company owners is in the right place. And we can talk, about products that, and I'll say one that just like it sounds like a Microsoft Flow, which is part of your Office 365 suite, that can automatically redirect files that are being saved to a proper file share and or SharePoint site and or Team site or Dropbox site, whatever it is that you guys want out there. So mobile management of mobile users. I hope everybody, and again, in this webinar, I want people to understand some of this may be something you already know, some of it may not be. So I apologize if it's too simple, but I think it's important for people who just want to understand the simplicity of work from home. Mobile management, we used to call it MDM. It's really not anymore. All the big companies have decided to look at things in a very different manner and say, I want to manage things across the board, laptops, desktops, mobile devices, smartphones, tablets, all of the above. So the idea is simply this. Right now in this current environment, we as IT people, as people in the organization, we want to be able to push and pull information so our users can be more productive. Information being, if I have a new application I have to roll out, I want to push it to that mobile device. If I have a new security policy, some sort of right that I want to create for my users, for example, I don't want people sending out a social security number or a telephone number in an email. I have to be able to do that from a remote or from afar. And that's where mobile device or mobile management or enterprise management and mobility, all these terms, by the way, you guys, that come out that we have to deal with. So as we talked about, it's important from a security perspective to be able to have this control over our users. And again, it's not overly complicated to set up and centralize, so we can do that. The last one, and I think it's something that I guess it seems so easy to us, but a lot of people called and asked about, was remote access and support. So traditionally, even though, our IT people, including ours and yours, have been able to get to our customers or our internal people's desktops, laptops, they've had remote tools to essentially log in. I think we're finding right now that a lot of people are saying, hey, one, I don't really have remote access, so when my user calls me and said I need help, I can't necessarily get into their desktop, or I can, but I don't, or laptop, I can, but I don't have a way to do it well. There are tools out there, and everybody knows a lot of them, that allow us to do that quickly and on the fly, from the log me ins to the, you can even use tools as simple as like Skype, all the way down to, anything that'll allow you to quote unquote share a screen and go in there and sort of take control to help somebody in a jam, especially these users who are going to be calling a service desk or your IT people for support. So think about that, because I don't think it's as easy as we thought it would be because we were so used to having IT people on site who would run out to the computer and fix it then. So super important to think about. So let's talk about, and I don't think we have any questions. Do we, Christy? None right now. Okay.
Not at the moment.
So,
Keep
okay.
cruising.
So identity management and security, and I'll give it to you in a different way. So every single employee at every one of our companies, the source of truth, where we decide or where our technology systems decide, hey, Sean Farrell is this person in the organization, is through our products that we call Active Directory or directory services. It's where groups are created of people, organizational units, just like they sound. This stuff is all very logical, where policies are created. So we spend so much time in companies who have been in the workplace going in and trying to understand, is everything set up right so everybody has access to the right things? Departments, groups, organizational units. And we find a lot of issues in that because, unfortunately, people have not always taken care of that. So more than ever, it's important that we make sure that employees in a simple form have access to the data and the applications they need. And so when we talk about Azure, or I'm sorry, we talk about Active Directory, we want to make sure that is where things are set up right so that everything else that we log into, let's say I use Salesforce for CRM or NetSuite for some of my ERP stuff, or QuickBooks for accounting, or Timberline for management of construction sites. We want to make sure that those people who should be accessing it have that right, a level of access. Let me move over to security. And security, people ask me all the time. I describe security. It's like a castle, right? You have your kings and queens and your princes and princesses. And right now, as owners of businesses, we're all trying to protect our castle. And what that means is that we have users in that castle. We have data that travels, words and emails and stuff that travels in and out. And security and simple tools that you guys should have in place that you may or may not need to be there while this, work from home thing is happening. And frankly, when it's not happening and we're back, in our workplaces. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about is just in general identity protection. And I'm not going to go into, the multi-factor authentication or being able to reset my password, but all of that stuff that you've heard before needs to be in place now so that when somebody is trying to get in from Florida and it's your CFO, but your CFO happens to be here in San Diego, your CFO will have this or some other device and get a password on it, or I should say a text message or an email, frankly, that says, here's your code to get in. So just make sure you have that stuff in place. MFA, multi-factor authentication, or self-service password reset. Super simple to do and super important right now, more than ever.
Hey, Sean, we have a
yes, ma'am.
question about Active Directory. Someone was asking if you could explain that a little bit more.
Of course. So just every single employee inside of our organizations has an identity. We take our person that we bring in. We're going to hire people in our. I'll make it even easier. We have people in probably HR, in operations, in IT, in sales, in marketing, in our C-suite of executives, senior leaders, for example. And every one of those people has different rights and access to certain things within inside the organization. When we go to work remote, oftentimes it's possible that, if those computers aren't set up right, those remote devices, if that profile of that person or that identity is not governed in the right way, people will end up getting access to the wrong things. So it's really where we control the user and the identity and what types of access they have. And like I say, too often, I don't see it set up correctly, or old employees that come, new ones come in, things are getting forwarded, and ultimately it's just not cleaned up would be a good word. But again, I call it the source of truth because if you don't have the right permission set up in Active Directory or your identity management tool, they're one and the same, it's just the term used for AD, then ultimately all the applications they have access to may not be correct. And again, hopefully most companies are in good shape there, but some may not be. One more thing. Today, what's happening, and people are asking me all the time, so I'm worried about my on-premise environment. I don't want to have servers there necessarily, and or my Active Directory server who sits in my, my back room there. What can I do? And so I'm going to I'm going to call out Microsoft a few times here. We can talk about Amazon or Google or any of the other providers if you guys want. But today what people are doing is sort of creating a second Active Directory inside of the Microsoft cloud. It's called Azure, which is their cloud, Active Directory. I don't want to confuse you with all the acronyms. I just want to say that we can essentially mirror Active Directory on premise in the cloud. And then that Active Directory, if we should ever decide to kind of get rid of the one on premise because we don't have an office or we just can't get to it for some reason through the internet, but we can still get to the Microsoft cloud, that Active Directory would control all the permissions for all of our people out there. Access to applications, like I mentioned earlier, like Salesforce, things like that. So I hope that gives you some idea, but that is the source of truth. That is gold in organizations, and it better be set up right because that's where vulnerabilities get created. And then the opposite of that, like I mentioned, of course, and like I mentioned, the opposite of that is sort of this concept of, how do we then take these mobile devices, laptops, tablets, smartphones, and then secure them? So just like they sound over on the right there, rights management. What does that mean? It means that I, as an organization, create certain rights around certain things that can happen. This email can go to this person, Christy Keating, and then at that point, she can't forward that email. So it kind of creates the ability for you as the organization, to send out an email with an Excel file and then say, stop it there. So you think about, we have this all the time, accountants of ours who want to send offline files of Excel to their own employees. Well, that's fine, but we can create rights around how they do that. And we can allow for things like the data loss prevention stuff to happen. And just like it sounds, like we can say, if this happens, then we want it to stop it here. Or if you try to send out a social security number, it's going to, flag it up on the top and say you can't do that, unfortunately. And in many, many industries right now, I mean, healthcare, of course, bio, all these things that we have to work in, and this has to happen for compliance reasons. So compliance becomes a larger topic. I'm sure everybody knows that's built around this basic, security type stuff. Intrusion prevention, like I mentioned earlier, I want to know when there is a potential threat from people from the outside. And there's a lot of terms for this. I just left it as intrusion prevention. There's threat protection. There's all these things. These tools are super important right now as people are trying to, get into our people's remote devices more than ever versus trying to get into our network first, that when we're working together, now it's a lot easier to access people's stuff at home. So we have to be, conscious of the fact that these remote workers are a little bit more vulnerable would be a good word. And then data management and centralized storage. Like I say, we talked about it a few minutes ago, but where does that data end up? I have customers, global customers, who talk about my business continuity plan, like how do I operate in this climate, or how do I store data in this climate? The first thing you got to think about is how do I make sure I get the data to a central place to then send it offsite or somewhere else and store it. So what I mean by that is people are going to follow, are going to do things that they don't necessarily do at work right now. They're going to not potentially be online at times, and they're going to save data to their desktop. They're going to be, I don't think they're going to be out a lot, but I think they're going to be, working at home and go right-click save file to, my this drive, my personal drive, or they might save things to their OneDrive or Dropbox account. I mentioned this earlier. It's easy to set up workflows. I'll keep it simple to be able to push that data to the right place so that you guys as company owners and as IT, executives and CIOs and all of us for that matter get a chance to make sure that our data is in the right place. The next one. So identity management. I just want to touch on this because I think that was a great question you asked about AD before, but just let's talk about identity today. So what's happening now is that because people are working remotely, and I just said this, we are seeing more vulnerabilities because unfortunately, and it makes me really sad to say this, in a time where people need to come together as humans and do the right thing for each other, at the same time we have those people out there who are going to try to jump into our networks and systems and of course, get into our data. I can't stress it enough. I'm sure everybody's been watching the news about what's going on currently. If you watch the news on, hacks and companies, networks and systems, it's happening more now than ever. So at that level, we have to make sure that our security posture is set up well and things are working right. The other thing to think about at your home is, having hotspots and Wi-Fi at your home or remote facilities. That's going to be a big thing for a lot of people who they, right now just don't have. And hotspots are tough to get. So if anybody has a smartphone, which I would say 99% of us do today, enable the hotspot, figure out how to deal with your organization as far as stipend, or just you probably already have one like we do, and make sure those are working, considering our Wi-Fi at home is off. And they're totally safe, you guys. Really, again, once we're connected to the internet, everything else around that our companies have set up from a security perspective will govern, what data and how these things are flowing, like I mentioned in the last slide. Anyway, that's it. The last one I would just say is manage devices. So devices, anything out there, computers are like people, kinda. I don't want to scare anybody there, but computers are like people. You have to keep your computer healthy. So as much as we ignore things like patches and updates, let me give you an example, a real life example. So people who are out there trying to hack into our networks and create things like viruses or crypto lockers or anything that really spam that we get, or any of those spoof emails, people who are doing that, you have to understand the virus companies, the anti-spam companies, all those guys, oftentimes when those things come into market, we're not prepared for them. I mean, I hate to even use a comparable, very much like what we're seeing in the real world right now. And so these companies have to come back in and figure out a fix for that. And that's what patches do, is once they have the fix, they get deployed. So it's super important that you guys have some tools set up to remotely manage and monitor your devices in one fashion or another as people are working remote. So the simple things to think about is, am I getting my patches and updates so my computers are healthy? Am I able to access those computers if I need to? Am I able to see sort of any vulnerabilities or anything that's happened on those computers? Can I manage my assets? Asset management is going to be a big one right now to make sure we know who has what and where and how they got it. So I know we weren't thinking about that as we were ordering computers and laptops and tablets, but it's going to be important so you can keep those computers healthy. So I'm going to try to give you some tips, and we'll go from there. So right now, I can't stress it enough. I never wanted to be a product company, I swear to you, but people need products right now to work remote. So get stuff as quickly as you can. At least know that in our world, and I trust that you guys will go online and see the same thing I'm seeing, it's hard to get hardware right now. So we can get it, limited supply, let me say that. So if you need it, call your sales rep, call us, call anybody for that matter. Order it on your own. Just make sure you validate with your IT folks that it's the right thing to get, and get the remote work stuff you're going to need to be successful. Review your current remote access setup. We talked about it earlier. Your help desk team, the VPN, the remote desktop, the direct access, the Windows virtual desktops, your Citrix, virtual desktops, however you access your environments, terminal servers, remotely, make sure you have reviewed that and you guys all understand, your users understand, by the way, how to do it. I think you're going to find it's going to be harder than you think, because our call volume has doubled in the last 2 or 3 days. People calling, asking, how do I get this VPN connected, or where is it on my desktop? I don't see the little icon. So try to get it as simple as you can. And that's why earlier I had recommended, things like a direct way of accessing your network through things like, say you have a Windows 10 computer. Let's see. The next one is make sure all policies and applications can be accessed from home. So what I mean by that is that, I'll keep this simple. Everybody's been hearing about the concept of like one password, one identity to get into everything, single sign-on for us tech people, or federation is another way to put it. So what I tell people all the time is, you'd be surprised, inside of the organization, I can get to everything. I can get to my CRM system, my ERP system, my accounting system. Sometimes if you don't have the right policies and or remote access set up, what I call the ability to have one single sign-on or one password for me that gets me to everything in my network, it's going to be challenging, or it can be challenging. So make sure that you're thinking about those things, and you have, in the technical term, federation tools in place to allow you to get to the things you need to access in this time. And those are super important. And we can take that conversation offline around what federation is and how do we make sure the things that me as an identity are supposed to get to, we get to. Okay, this one, I can't stress it enough. Hand sanitizer, by the way. Oh, we need a lot of that. Get a hub for collaboration. I am, yeah. Get a hub for collaboration and tools. Everybody's probably heard of the tools like Slack and Microsoft Teams, and there's some others out there. Facebook has a workplace app. Google has, their hub. I can't stress enough, making it easy to share information and data across your organization is going to be key to having a collaborative workforce. Again, I told my team it's so easy for us. Everybody says, oh, we already do all that. I say, I know, but for a lot of people out there, it's going to be old email ways of sharing data. It's going to be saving it to my computer. So get tools in place so you guys can do this. So let me give you a simple example. And again, I want to be good to everybody out there and not try to, mention any vendors, but Microsoft's Teams product is the fastest growing product in technology ever. And anything that any of our SharePoint companies out there, I don't know if you guys are realizing stuff's flying into Teams there. It's where it's all stored. Skype, the phone system / instant messaging video product is in Teams now. It's super simple to put your documents, your document management, your files, whatever you want to call it, have your calls, have your video calls, have your security, meaning who gets access to what, all that identity in one hub. So it's all manageable by your IT team. So think about that if you don't already have it. And honestly, I'll back up and say, you don't have to have a hub in that respect for some sort of collaboration, but you do have to have the basics, the video, the file sharing piece where you can get to your data easily, the phone so you can make a call, and just, security built around that. And then get mobile devices, and get them in a place where, you can push and pull information to them. You can push patches, push updates. You can ultimately log into the computer. And I'll talk about this in a second. I guess I hadn't really given a lot of thought until yesterday, but how do we manage these devices as IT people? It's going to become a challenge, especially when I can't run out to everybody's home to fix their computer. So think about that, how we can push and pull information and manage devices remotely. So I figured be very direct with everybody out here who's on this call about pricing and costs and things like that. I mean, you can go out and do this on your own. I'm sure many of you already know about all of this stuff. So I have to assume 95% of the world uses some form of Microsoft product. And again, I don't know if everybody's aware, like Microsoft got really smart about 5 years ago and said, we're going to work with everybody. So if you're a big Mac fan or an iOS person or a Google, it doesn't matter. All you need to know is you need to have some sort of hub to do work. And allow for a remote workforce to happen. So Microsoft offers products that have everything I just talked about, everything from Word, Excel, so let's say Office, from email to Teams, video conferencing, Flow, we talked about the Flow, even down to tools that allow us as managers, leaders in organizations to look at like analytics of users. What I mean by that is I can look any given day and see all my employees who are working remote in a product called My Analytics and be able to see what they're doing on a daily basis. Now, I'm not here to micromanage. I'm here to make sure that everybody's staying productive in a remote capacity. So those tools are all included inside of this platform from Office 365. They call it Business Premium. And we, like other organizations, get a discount on it. But that just gives you an idea of what it takes to set up, at least on the software side, a remote workplace so that your users can be more productive. And again, I'm sure many of you guys are going, I already have it. So many of you guys may be asking, how do I optimize and get to what Sean's talking about today so we work more efficiently in a remote capacity? And over here, you'll see on the right, I mean, this hub, which is really what it is where you're seeing all these things like, being able to do meetings in video. And while you're on that video, share a document. And then while you're sharing that document, co-author that document so it doesn't have to be sent back and forth via email. It is like it says, it's a way to bring together your business community and frankly, people on the outside too, where you can share documents more easily and allow for your customers to even co-author with you or share information back and forth.
Hey, Sean, there's a question. So I know there's probably a lot of people here who have access to Team, but for those who don't, someone was wondering if there's a free trial for it.
Oh, yes, there is. So I don't want to overcomplicate things. I don't want to tell you that if you spun up Teams, which means get it up and running, you have to do some internal work and say, somebody's got to say in the business, okay, I want all of these sales folders to go under this new channel. It's called a channel in Teams that I create for sales, which is where you can save all your files and documents. But the answer is yes. There's a 6-month trial, so you can get it up and running. And, it's something that we can enable for customers. It takes a little time, but once that's up and running, you go through kind of a quick governance exercise and taxonomy, as we call it. Like, everybody's got to sit and figure out where they want files to go and how do you want them to, back to what I said, make sure data is managed correctly. But yes, they're doing trials so people can use this stuff. And again, in that is things like video and conferencing. So anyway, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. And we just have a few more minutes here, so I want to make sure I know we have a couple more slides we want to get through. So
Sure.
I'll
All
just
right.
time check you there.
Yeah. So tools we can provide in a hurry, guys. So, we have a help desk. I know everybody knows it's based here in San Diego, California. I don't want to make this complicated for anybody. If customers need our help, whether it's to triage tickets or service, we do full outsource 24/7 remote help desk. We are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So for a lot of people who are now calling from home, our night shifts are taking some significant amount of calls. We talked about that Microsoft product. Again, there is other products. There's Google Docs and other ones. But anyway, that is $12.50. There's hundreds and hundreds of SKUs for Microsoft, but I just wanted to give you kind of what I would consider the most commonly used one. We do consulting on an hourly basis to help get through this process with you guys, figure out what you do and don't have on an hourly CIO service basis. And then we do hourly setup and migrations for companies. I mean, again, I don't want this to come across in any way as a sales tactic, but it is something that you guys need to be aware of. And a lot of this stuff, if you go to Microsoft, you can get it directly. We just happen to get a discount on it.
Hey, Sean,
So
we've got another question that just came in.
Yeah, of course.
So they've said that I've seen Teams video limited to only 4 people on a screen at one time, rotating between who's speaking, despite how many people are in the actual conference. So they've said they've seen many message boards asking Microsoft to make a change to add more people due to the influx of remote workers within the past month. Do you have any insight on this? I know that I've spoken to some of our help desk technicians that, I mean, Teams is constantly coming out with updates. Before, you couldn't manage at the channel level. Now you can. So it's constantly innovating. So I'd imagine it's definitely on the future features coming out, but I don't know if you have any additional insight, Sean.
Well, so the answer is it's gonna pick up whoever's talking, of course, and you're gonna be able to see the portfolio of people in it. What you can do is there are cameras that are, well, actually, no, I'm going to say no. The answer is there are cameras inside of organizations, which we're not there right now, that allow us to pick up the whole room. And if you're having board meetings, things like that. But the answer is they're working on that to sort of get us the Brady Bunch-esque type Teams view, but it's just something they haven't gotten yet. So you're going to just end up switching between users, and you're going to be able to see who's calling and what questions are coming up through the instant message piece.
Yeah,
I saw
so
another one, Chris.
as we get more information, you guys, we'll definitely try and roll that out to you in real time, because I know that's something internally we're looking at too. So.
I saw a question there. What was the next one?
That was just, they said thank you for.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, and I'm sorry. I mean, it's amazing. Their product right now is just it's grown 500% over the last week, as you guys can all imagine. I mean, it is a very handy way to collaborate and get everybody working in one place. I will say that, and I mean that, God honesty. So, help desk, interesting, and just in general, like if you think about it for business owners, you think about it if you're in IT and we work with you, or anybody for that matter, it is going to become challenging for your IT person to deal with the work from home or workforce. People were used to potentially coming in and saying, hey, tapping somebody in the shoulder saying, I need your help. That is not the case. People can't go to each other's homes right now to be able to help each other. So the reality is, I think, and maybe people are saying there's other ways, we have to be able to call into somewhere, log something, a ticket hopefully, and be able to then remotely access that device and help that person out. And a lot of companies weren't set up for this. So we offer up, again, and by the way, call 24/7. We offer up kind of two flavors of ways to do this. We have a service ticketing system. Many of you on the phone may know and use it already, that we quickly deploy an agent to every remote device. It takes no time at all. Then that gives us things like remote access to log in, asset inventory stuff. It gives us the ability to patch and update computers. And ultimately, even if your IT team wants to continue to do all the support, we can join them as a user to our system, so that when your user emails helpdesk at, let's say, managedsolution.com, we can set up your organization in there, and ultimately they can take the tickets and remotely remediate them for the customer using some of our remote login tools. And they can also see the health of your remote workforce as we go through this. The second option is we can just do help desk support for our customers and work, again, even with your IT teams during these challenging times, where we can all be taking tickets and decide who to assign them to. So I'll keep it that simple. But that's really what we can do while we're working from home now remotely. And again, I just see this as becoming a more challenging environment as people are just not going to be able to get to support as quickly as they need. So with that, I think that's it. I think we've got 15 minutes to spare, but I hope that was quick and easy. Are there any other questions? I saw one.
I get the question is more about like on-site support. I mean, is how are we handling that right now?
Yeah, I mean, first things first, is everybody knows, and I hope everybody's done, is we've had a remote work policy, so it makes it easier for us to help companies with this for over 3 years. We went after the results-oriented work environment about 3 or 4 years ago, everyone. So our employees are in and out, but we are listening to both our state and local governments, our field teams who are out there, if needed, are still being deployed to customers who either work on site. We don't necessarily do home visits unless it's an emergency, but ultimately we do have people still out in the field, and we are accommodating those people themselves and their individual needs to make sure that everybody's safe and protected. But there is, the need for us to work and help people, so we're still out there working. Our offices are pretty vacant. We have a few people in there per day, staging computers, getting things ready for everybody. But we're doing our best to accommodate and deal with the current situation.
Cool, thank you. That's all the questions I see right now, but as you guys can see on the screen, Sean's direct mobile line is right there. You can visit our website and find out more information there. We've got a couple blog articles, and I'm working on some more content to get in your hands so that you guys are well equipped to continue productivity during this difficult time. So thank you for joining today. Sean, is there anything else you'd like to add? No,
and I say this sincerely, everyone. The weekend hit hard for everybody, and the previous weeks too, as we were came to understanding what this all was. All I know is is everybody's I'm sure a little bit nervous right now with what's going on. We just want to provide some safety, knowing that we can enable the technology workforce, or the work from home remote workforce. That's what we do. And we just, if anything, I think, Christy, you may have published some articles. I saw them the other day in our marketing. 15 minutes, talk to somebody from our company about what are your options. We just want to make sure you guys feel at least secure there, that you're doing the right thing, as you have to get these people working from afar. So, I wish you all the best. I really do. And if you need anything, just give us a call. Thanks, everyone. We'll be sending out the slides and recording shortly after this, so stay tuned for that. And we're looking at doing a phase 2 as well, talking a little bit deeper about some of these products and tools, as well as how you can really buff up some security. So stay tuned for that invite as well. Thanks again for joining, and keep washing those hands and stay well. Thanks, guys.